taken leadership and working together with other county departments on this. It is truly a multi-county department initiative, and working with agencies throughout the state and the region. We'd like to really show you how it's being used, and we think that the potential is far beyond what we're looking at right now, and it's really a new approach to the way the county can do business. With that, I have some handouts. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Darren Jablonski. Darren is the manager of our planning research and GIS. He's the head guru, the top cheerleader, and as he goes through, sometimes he gets really excited, so I'm hoping that that enthusiasm and excitement is also picked up by the board. So, and please stop us, because sometimes we've worked on it a long time. We pick up acronyms and terms that sometimes I know people want a little bit more information on. So please, interrupt us at any time if you have questions. So we have, there's actually two parts that we want to do. We want to talk about GIS and what it is and how we're using it, and then we also want to give you a presentation on the newly and very much in the infant stage is the land records portal and how we see that being used in the county. So with that, Darren,
Darren's okay if we turn this.
Yeah. Darren Jablonski with St. Louis County Planning and Development Department. Thank you for having me. I don't know, early in the morning, this is always a good introduction anyway for GIS. Basically, as Barb's going to hand a few documents out, the first document you'll see is actually just a document that we put together that explains our utilization of GIS across the county. It's basically just a high level of integration of spatial technology in each department. It just kind of highlights how some departments are using it currently and where some departments are going in the future as well. The second document that's being handed out, this blue document, is the second piece of my presentation, is basically talking about the land records portal and how what it is, how it's put together, and where we're headed with the portal. And then the third document is essentially our progress report of our cadastral or our parcel layer today. So with that, what I'll do is I'll begin the presentation and kind of go through the whole presentation, kind of giving you the highlight of what's going on in the county GIS system. First today, basically what is GIS, county uses of GIS, our county, the county's GIS direction, where are we headed, what are the new technologies in the future, and how are we going to put it all together, and where we see some of these opportunities. And of course, there's always challenges in every opportunity. And also kind of discuss the land information portal. On your front, basically, what is GIS? GIS is basically a system that's used to view, understand, question, interpret, model, and then visualize data, and be able to map trends, integrate data that's all spatially driven across the globe. Any navigation system uses GPS and GIS to really put a location to any piece of data, and that intelligence behind that location information in spatial technology is a core to a lot of our systems we manage across the county, from land records to emergency situations to operations. So from the spatial data, we can really measure, store, analyze, visualize, and act upon and collaborate upon this data that's the spatial data that's integrated. And ultimately, the GIS system provides a lot of opportunities to really force standards and the integration of data across both tabular and spatial data and put them all together in different views. So what GIS provides is the ability to it provides lots of operation and business support, and I'll kind of show you some of the business support across the county. Better decisions, more informed, quicker, improved productivity and efficiency. We're really putting data together once and using it many times. Improved data management, improved access to data and information, that's through the portal as well. Management of our spatial world, and a more effective communication, because we're all seeing the data into a spatial view, and it's our own data as well. So So looking at GIS under the hood, what is essentially GIS? You know, in our world, what is GIS? This is GIS. This is just in a very raw form. Spatial data starts with, GIS system starts with data. The core to every system is data, and you'll see this in our 911 operations when we get to that portion. GIS starts with data, and data is manipulated and can connect to all kinds of data at the ground level under the hood. So everything we do, everything map you see, every visualization you see in data, every service, Google Maps, Bing, this is what it all starts out as, is data. And ultimately, this data is translated to a map. So a lot of times we'll edit a map, but that's translating the editing of the database. So GIS is just a massive database. And so our department, the GIS, we're managing a lot of data, but we're also managing the spatial environment. And the county manages 400 spatial data sets and probably several hundred peripheral data sets from different federal, state, and other local agencies within our servers. Basically, another view of GIS is an XY coordinate. If you have multiple layers of data, so every database you saw those little charts going up, these are different databases. And you can drill down through the databases based on XY coordinate and get all the information on that XY coordinate, drilling through the same XY coordinate through every database in the county. So now you multiply that by 400 data sets, you can grab a lot of data connected to a lot of systems and information within seconds based on XY coordinate. Now, all your navigation systems is the coordinate systems. So that's the GPS is really coordinated to the GIS system through this whole concept. So they're really integrated. And again, this is a bunch of databases at the raw form. So basically, in our high level, what's happening in our county is a lot of times what we'll do is we'll author the data, and the data on our desktops in the county, and we're connected to all the databases. We'll publish it to our servers, and then we'll author it to a lot of end users across the county, from desktop to Explorer to viewers to mobile units to other APIs and other systems across the county. So what we're doing is we're authoring a lot of this data and manipulating that data and processing that data, whatever in the new trends, views, analysis, and then authoring it to the user tier, which is the end user.
Mr. Chair,
Keith.
are we going to go through the presentation? If we have questions,
I think we should keep it free-flowing. If questions emerge during the presentation, we should ask them. So if you have something.
Darren, one of the things we had talked about is the utilization for industry within you know, our realtors and appraisers, those types of things. And we had talked about a fee-for-service type of thing. Is that integrated into any piece of this?
Yes, it will be. That'll be part of the portal concept at the end of the presentation.
Okay.
Where our vision is building the system, getting it out there, and now building the applications. Essentially, these applications, the viewers and all these applications that these real estate agents can get the data. And sometimes we'll send them the raw data. Sometimes they want the view of this data in the nice screen. It's a multitudes of systems, and the portal really is this foundation for that, being able to subscription services, our partners, and other agencies.
Okay.
So basically, what's happening? Right now, every industry, market, county, city, jurisdiction is facing the same boat, more or less. They've got a lot of systems out there. They got a lot of database systems, but they're not spatially enabled. Their standards of data connections between the tabular world and the spatial world are challenging. So right now, just as the county is going through right now, is we're instituting standards on all our databases so that they can talk to the spatial world, and how you connect those tabular databases to be able to map it somewhere along some spatial coordinate. So that's what we're going through right now, is going through a lot of databases across the county and really making them standardized so that the tabular world and the spatial world can really work together, and pushing services out to the end users for a lot of business lines and business needs. Basically, what are the common patterns that we've seen in the county, and this is pretty much across the industry. The county started in 1985 in GIS. We started pretty much at the desktop level. It was just everyone started at desktop. We got software on a desktop. Well, more people needed it, so we got a multi-user platform where we said, okay, oh, this person in this department needs it, this person, 911 needs it, public works, assessor, planning. And so we started seeing a multi-user environment, work groups. And so your databases had to kind of correlate to that. And then now, what we're in right now is a fully federated or enterprise system where we're actually saying, no, we have to manage our whole infrastructure differently, and to really being able to put a hub there and be able to push out services in a coordinated approach. So that's more of a federated enterprise, and that's where the county is right now, is more in the federated enterprise. And a lot of cities and counties are in different stages and different environments. So basically, what about, okay, now after what is GIS, how does the county actually use this stuff, and how do we implement it in our systems? Before we start, I put this chart together, it's actually in your packet as well. St. Louis County's got additional challenges in GIS than most cities and townships or federal or state agencies have, especially at the city level. We've got a large geographic territory, so any data initiative or data development or maintenance, it's compounded in terms of the size of our county. So we're managing data not only for areas, but a geographic area of 7,000 square miles. So our scale of our data management has to be very robust and streamlined and productive. And so kind of put in our context, you know, we're size of states spatially. Again, St. Louis County started a GIS in 1985 in our land department for our land forest management. And ever since, we've been progressing through that desktop, multi-user, probably in the mid-90s. Now, in the mid-2000s, we went to the enterprise federated level. So we're kind of progressing as well. And we've been in GIS since '85, so it's not new to us. And we've been very strong in GIS, and it's been under the radar for the most part, but it's been very effective. Basically, the use of GIS, this is a high level. We use it in our 911 operations, all our land records management, natural resource management, transportation, community and economic development, and a lot of planning initiatives, waste management, public health, and new emerging county uses is in human services and facility management. Basically, kind of give you a highlight, in the sheriffs right now, they're using it for a lot of crime analysis, search and rescue, more and more every day, every month, every week. They're using a lot of spatial technology to assist in any raid, seizures, planning, preparation, mitigation, emergency operations, and regional public safety issues. And a lot of that's tied to, of course, is the 911 dispatch. I'm going to kind of highlight the 911 sheriff's area a lot because they're the ones that are becoming it's completely integrated. GIS is completely integrated more and more into their entire operations. And so I'll kind of explain. GIS is used as a base data set for 911 CAD. Our road center lines is the main database that's merged together with the regional databases that is used to dispatch the 911 system. Also for rural addressing and so forth. I'll kind of highlight the 911 a little bit more. Auditors is more and more using it for property descriptions, errors, discrepancies in the layout of the land, kind of what's going on, what's happening out there. And now that this year they're probably going to be, in the next couple of years, probably we'll be assisting them in the redistricting, using GIS a little bit more in redistricting. And of course, you know, visually seeing what's layout of the land out there. Assessors are becoming pretty much trying to integrate it in all their operations, from doing assessment, from identifying property values, different classifications, and kind of embedding and automating a lot of the land grading systems in the assessor's department more and more. and bringing that data into their whole workflow and kind of their operations. Planning and Development Department, for all our zoning, you probably are used to seeing a lot of these maps.
Darren, did you see that news story about the invasion of Costa Rica last week? That on their GIS, I guess it was Honduras. Did anybody see this?
I did.
Was it Honduras that invaded Costa Rica because
Or vice versa. We don't want to.
on the Google map they had the border wrong, and
Google
so
Map was probably wrong.
it was wrong. I apologize. But we
Data sets, we manage it, and every time updating things a little bit off, it might be we have to upgrade them and managing them. But those are the other issues where the boundary, those are the other data sets that we may bring in into our GIS system that to connect data, because they might have a unique data set that we might want to connect to, but the data quality is kind of, I'm a little unsure about it. But that's only data you have. So those issues will always be out there, but what we're really focusing on is the county side of the quality and doing that QA, QC process on updating the data every time someone brings up an issue or we flag an issue. Our parcel layer, you'll see some slides of it, there's a lot of discrepancies out there on legal descriptions and stuff we can't fix. And there's a lot of attorney issues and there are going to be discrepancies out there for a long time, but our overall goal is tighten it, tighten it, tighten it, tighten it, tighten it, and that's how we're kind of our division set up, is really strong data management, and that's where the whole GIS, core of GIS is strong data management as your infrastructure, because it's so critical to all these other operations. If you've got a strong data management system, QA, QC system, everything else just flows out from there.
thanks. Yeah, yes you did.
I just want to go on record, if we're going to invade another county, I want Cooch County, the fishing is better, over Carlton.
Point well taken. Ask is a bad idea.
Just let's not take money.
We're already under attack by the Republicans right now.
It's always a data set. You can manipulate data any which way you want.
I just had this done. That was very good.
And so the planning department uses it for a lot of the planning commission. You probably, a lot of you have seen these maps at different times that we use to apply for the planning commission variances. But also our plat book, we're going to be, for the first time, we're going to be, rather than vendoring it out, we're going to do it in shop, because now we've got the parcel layer. Now we can automate this whole system. Before it was a very manual process. So now, for the first time with our cadastral, we're going to be able to automate our plat book and a huge productivity. And of course, other planning activities.
Darren, when you mentioned the redistricting piece of this, something sparked to me. Is under the federal government, when they're doing the door-to-doors, are they entering data that we can then capture?
On the census data.
Under the census data?
Yep, we can connect it to all the GIS systems.
Yeah.
They actually have a GIS, or ERSI actually has a redistricting application. I mean, obviously it's the auditor's responsibility. We'll just providing data and showing them, working with them on providing.
ERSI.
That's our software vendor.
Okay.
It's
So
global
nationally,
vendor.
they'll be used nationally.
Okay.
They got a question.
We are still going to put that plat book out as a book.
Correct. It'll still,
online.
we'll still have a hard copy.
And there won't be any ads.
There'll still be a hard copy, and people like it, so.
Yeah.
The recorders are using it more and more on foreclosures, recording property, title searches, and as time goes by, it'll be more embedded in all the operations. Land department uses it for a lot of trust land management. They actually use a lot of GIS in sale of their property. as well as mapping a lot of the public lands that they own and where they are and how they're connected to all the other lands adjoining it. So it can kind of see a heads up of what's happening, the layout of the land and where the locations of all these properties. In the database, you can't see it, but visually, it's a whole different world for us. And then kind of their trust management, I'll kind of highlight some of their future uses of GIS as well. Public Works uses it for a lot of their different applications, from survey control. Their survey control is the foundation skeleton fabric for our cadastral or our parcel layer. It is the beginning, so they have a lot of GIS needs. They use GIS in a lot of the roads, management and overlay and planning. MIS more and more is getting into it for infrastructure support. Where's our utilities in the ground? What's happening in the ground? Where are they coming in? If we need to site a cell tower, this is a map we provided a while ago, exactly the line of sight needed for siting of a cell tower or communication equipment, exactly what's going to happen in the slope and what's going to be in the way. Property management is more and more getting into it in terms of the fee sale property, fee land management. PHHS this is an emerging used area within the county where the more and more they're using it for planning for their foster care, their other data sets that they have to really start mapping them. But there's a lot of challenges because there are a lot of protected data. So it's a kind of a slow but sure. As well as environmental services use it for a lot of their land sanitary landfill planning, what's out there, what's happening, what are the environmental issues out there, and kind of some of the septic problem areas as well. Kind of going to, kind of doing some department highlights. I'm going to kind of have quite a few highlights because our 911 and sheriffs are really completely starting more and more become completely integrated with GIS technology and systems based on the systems they use, and using our spatial databases as the drivers to a lot of emergency operations, dispatch from planning, dispatch to mitigation to recovery. All those operations are used in GIS. So this is our 911 operations center. You can see one of the monitors is always the GIS monitor. So you can see some of these monitors have GIS on them. So a lot of the data, what's happening is that as the GIS databases are uploaded to the data system, they're all coordinated from the mapping to the tabular dispatch of the system. So the GIS data is used to identify the boundaries, the districts, the response areas, and geocoding those road center lines so that they know where you are. So when the call comes in, if it's a cell phone call, they can pinpoint it on a map. So they know where that map is. It's really a whole new, I'll kind of show you a picture of exactly what's happening with the cell phone technology. So 911 dispatch is completely integrated. Without GIS, they could not function, essentially, with dispatch. This is a little bit more closer view. This is the GIS monitor. You can see the call came in right there. Kind of a hard picture to see. Another picture, you can see the map. And as calls come in, they know where the police officers dispatched. I think many of you have already seen this. A lot of flags start flagging up on there and kind of showing where the responses are. This is an example of a cell phone call coming in. This is actually a picture of a call coming in, a phase 2 compliance. So by phase 2 that they have to be compliant with essentially be able to, 911 systems be able to read that cell phone call and be able to map it. So when that call comes in, it maps it on our GIS system. So right away, the advantages of that is immediate. We know exactly where they are spatially. Before we had no clue where they were. So right now we're pinging them and we know exactly where they are on the location of the globe. So in any emergency operations, if they're a lost hunter, just recently, not too long ago, we had a lost hunter with a child that we essentially walked them out of the woods rather than sending a whole search and rescue. So that's huge savings right there. We essentially say, walk 300 feet because we can measure 300 feet, hit this trail, go up, and you'll be at Highway 8. So there's a lot of advantages of what we've used GIS system for. And now the whole thing works together because that call comes in, it's mapped. And what's coming up where the 911 system's going is not only seeing where the calls are, going back here, as they move, we can refresh and watch them move as well. So now, the next phase what GIS system, the 911 system's doing is they're going to be instituting a term called AVL, or Automatic Vehicle Location Locator, which essentially is we're putting GPS chips within our law enforcement vehicles so we can see them coming down this road, so we can see them moving in relation to this call. So we can see a live movement of all the 911 operations on the screen. And that's what they're implementing now. So essentially, what's happening at the high level is, of course, GPS is out. Everyone talks GPS, GIS. They're two different things, but they kind of relate to each other. So all our emergency law enforcement will have chips in them, so we can start dispatching and watching all these vehicles on the map movement based on this kind of going through an infrastructure and coming to the mapping system. So our dispatchers have a live view of the overall situation. A call comes in, you can say, okay, there's a police responder within 1.1 miles, and a couple 10 seconds later, he's 3.3 miles away and should be there within 5 seconds.
Jared,
so that's what's happening.
are we getting enough satellites? Are we getting 3 and 4 throughout the county at this point? Or do we still have areas of the county where we're limited to?
There's still areas of the county because of the terrain and stuff like that. So and that poses a challenge. One of the challenges that I have is the infrastructure, is the size of the county. And the technology infrastructure we use has to be exactly what you pointed out, is we got to accommodate those issues where all of a sudden you go out of service and there may be some human knowledge needed to be taken into account there too. So there are missing spots for sure. So this is basically the map, kind of a faded out map. But what the county is doing is a complete AVL GIS integration in the winter, spring of 2011. So that's initial phases. I think the grant, you've seen this grant come through for AVL for 911, and that's what's happening is that AVL is watching those vehicles move and be able to respond to emergency operations and situations faster. And this is Hell's Angels rally, kind of showed you the need for our GIS integration and, how would I say that, collaboration between different levels of agencies. It exposed one flaw in GIS, is that the communication between the different agencies had to improve. And the GIS is going to be used to do that. This is just an example of some issues that GIS is being used as a main platform for communication between all levels of government, not just emergency operations, but land records, transportation, community development. So it's becoming kind of the common verbiage between a lot of systems. You can see this is the setup. We set up the GIS as part of the monitoring of the situation.
Did the Angels let them put chips on their motorcycles?
They would have crushed those right away.
It's not standard equipment.
Jaron, but on that same vein, have we looked at this? A number of the alternatives within the justice system involve electronic monitoring.
Yes, in fact, a couple weeks ago I had a question by AJC. I forget the gentleman's name. Pomeroy. He asked me about in our old plan. I don't have it. Let's go. This is a good example. AJC is starting to explore the use of GIS in all their monitoring, because now GIS is such an intelligent system. It's saying, okay, if this is a predator, lives right here, a sexual predator, I'm just using that as a sexual predator level 3 is right there, and there's a school right there that he can't come within 3 of their boundaries, we can put a chip in the ankle bracelet that they cannot remove and put a virtual buffer around that school of 300 feet, and when that GPS encroaches on that virtual buffer, alarms go off. So it's a whole new world, and there's systems out there that are already implemented and used. So AJC, Arrowhead Corrections is looking at it, but it's going to be a long-term
And the reason I ask that, I mean, with the security concerns up at the NERC Center, you know, that question, I know I've asked that question, that is there a way that we could put electronic monitors on every inmate if they get outside of that 1,000-foot
And that's how we would do it.
perimeter?
Exactly. Okay. And that's how we would do it. We implement it in GIS, and that's how a virtual buffer. And that would be, alarm bells would go off, and you can create your virtual buffers however you want. And if they drive in that virtual boundary, they don't even see it. But map, you can see it.
Say, Darren, are these satellite signals interrupted by inclement weather?
Yeah, they can be.
Such as, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
satellite TVs were interrupted by snowstorms, so it's similar to that.
That's right.
Darren, one other question going back to the physical planning piece of it, and I don't know, you know, we have companies coming to us all the time asking for easements across county land. Is one of the things that we should start requiring is that if they are going to, as an example, the petroleum pipeline, start requiring that if we are going to grant an easement across county land, that they would also provide us with the mapping of their entire system as it pertains to St. Louis County. As an example, because I mean, sitting on planning, that's something you see an awful lot of, and if we're going to give the company something, we should get something back. So if there's a policy change we need to do there to help this system, I'd like to see that move forward.
And I think Mark Monticelli's group, the recorders and Public Works, with the platting, it started with the platting, being able to provide us electronic versions so we can dump it in and it can go all from there.
And Darren, the reason I ask it, I mean, you know, the pipeline, as an example, exploded right up near my uncle's property, and you know, that GIS, that being able to pinpoint that type of thing certainly could have helped in the response time, other things.
And that's precisely the type of data that we don't want out for the general public to.
Right.
So it's that type of thing.
That would be protected data, but we would have it available.
So kind of going back here, so basically showing kind of, GIS is becoming the norm for the communication tool with all these different agencies, from the federal, state, local agencies. And every agency at every level is really pushing standards so that they can communicate with one system, and GIS is essentially the system that they're using to really communicate with all these different agencies, the feds, the states, the local agencies that have to work together on managing a situation.
Does that mean that you'll be able to reduce the number of people who respond to specific things? I mean, one of the jokes around the state at this particular point is that if there's an accident just outside of a town, and Grand Rapids was one of the interesting points where they had 7 or 8 different groups of people who responded to the same accident.
Yes.
And all the people that come off of their beats in order to do this one.
The GIS, if they're on the GIS system, they dispatch the appropriate locality and agency that responds there, and they're dispatching. Before, it was just like, I don't know, we'll just, we're just calling everyone to get there. Now GIS has said, okay, no, you've got this boundary, you're over there. This site is the closest, so you're responding. And before, they'd all respond. So that is happening right now, but there are some agencies that don't have what the county has in service for dispatching. It is what it is, I guess, in terms of the technology progression of those agencies. So the GIS can really help in all kinds of situations, from 911 to sheriff's operations. So 911 is using to really dispatch all the resources. And now the sheriffs and their field operations and their mobile operations can use GIS more and more as they respond to whatever situation it is, and there's just so many of them. And this is the 35W collapse, pictures of the operations with the 35W bridge. The GIS was right next to the headquarters as the main piece of their operations to really capture staging media, staging the recovery efforts, and all the evidence. And so this is a kind of some internal operations, so you can kind of see the GIS is right next to the operations. So what happened at every shift, they'd stage all the evidence, and every shift that was changing, they'd have a quick rundown meeting of all the new officers online that day and show them all the changes overnight on the map where the staging, the blockades were. And so it was very useful in their daily operations and just managing the situation. Our land department's using GIS in their mobile foresters more and more in all their handhelds. They're using handhelds in their field operations right now for all their to manage their trusts, essentially, and all the operations for that. Public Works is getting more and more into looking at the AVL. You know, you talk about AVL for automatic vehicle location for the squad cars, but you can also implement it for the Public Works as well. So Public Works is kind of looking at it to kind of implementing some pieces. It's not fully true AVL, but it's got little pieces of it in different facets, but different cities and counties are looking at it as well. And then we've got GIS across the county is getting so big right now that it's embedded in all operations, very undersubtly for different managing of projects, programs, initiatives, and just their daily activities. So these are just some of the projects out there that they've used them for, different mapping projects, I should say, and products. So what's our county's approach to this whole massive, you know, GIS is a massive industry. It's used in the military, it's used in the county governments, it's used in the oil industry. So how does our county manage this whole system to make it effective for us? So what we've done is we're, part of our GIS plan is we really cataloged into 6 main categories and really said, okay, the GIS system has to be successful in all these areas. You can be lacking in one area, but it's really going to start dragging down the whole system. So basically, you have to have a strong governance. After the governance, that's how you're structured, kind of how you operate, your procedures, your workflow, all that. And then the second piece is one of the most important pieces is your data management. Just the raw data, management of your raw data, your 400 data sets, the QA/QC process. That data's got to be solid, it's got to be maintained, and if you let it slowly go to essentially degrade, it becomes less and less useless, so you have to keep it maintained. And then the next piece is the processing of that data, creating new views of that data into services, web services. Like Google Maps, they create a view of all that data into their services. So just like GIS, we got all that raw data, we're packaging that data into applications, whatever it's applications, maps. And then we got to have a strong infrastructure network. And then ultimately you can create applications that consume all these pieces. And so that's what our portal application does. It's one of the pieces of the puzzle. It starts consuming and bringing all these pieces together. And then the implementation and monitoring of our system. So kind of the governance, we do a lot of planning in the planning department, I guess. We plan with a system like this in the county's structure. We want to plan it right for long-term success, not just to quickly get stuff out there to look glossy, but under the hood it's really weak. So what we're doing is we're building a system with a good solid foundation, square corners for building. You know, it starts with the foundation. So the data, and so we do a lot of planning, and of course we don't want to just plan the plan, we want to execute the plan. So that's what we're doing, is we're executing the plan.
What about that word pan there?
Plan, pan.
Plan, pan?
Oh, you got
See, plan. It's a gold rush. You know how to plan, but we not know how to spell. And then the data, of course. We catalog our data. Of course, we talk about that data, 400 data sets. Now, how do we catalog that data? That's a lot of data. And each 400 data sets may have hundreds of records. So we're managing millions and tens of millions of records. And so how do we catalog that data? So what we've done is we've created the core enterprise spatial data infrastructure and catalog this data into structured categories that correlate to national and state standards. So we've kind of cataloged all this data. So under each data set, such as administrative boundaries, there may be 40, 50 different data sets, zoning boundaries, zip code boundaries, commissioner district boundaries, all those kind of administration boundaries.
Darren, is USDA sites for our ag industry a component part of this, or will it be a component?
It
part
could
of
be,
this?
yeah, when you say ag sites,
For our ag industry, agricultural industry, USDA obviously in all of the farming counties has a tremendous database for
correct.
this type of application. They don't have that database necessarily for St. Louis County.
Yeah, and I don't know the status of that.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's just a curiosity if that's something that we could also
We could look
use through, you know, our extension.
Yeah, what's
folks.
nice is that you bring up a good point, because that 400 data sets we manage and that 200 data sets that we can connect to all the other data sets, what we do is we put this is the county data, then we connect to all the other peripheral data sets that would be matched with the county. So we kind of separate the two but mesh the two, and that's where we just call it Department of Agriculture and just basically say, what do you got, what's your timeline, implement it and bring it in. So. And of course, you can imagine, talking about industries, every industry, and we get a lot of calls for people to get our data, because they need to do their operations as well. And then the county, essentially, our strength in the county is our data. We've got a lot of data in the county. We've been doing this for 25 years. We've got a lot of strong data. We're data rich. We have 400 data sets. Sometimes I don't want to look at the numbers. We want to talk about the quality of those data sets, because people are talking about, I got 600. Well, we want to focus on the quality of those data sets as time goes by.
Can I go one more step with that, Mr. Chair, if I may?
Please,
John, this one would be for you. You know, the DNR mandates all drilling that takes place in this county. They have to do a match set of drilling and inventory that with the DNR. But now they've gone to electronic base exploration like they did this summer. Is there a way that we could build that database, or is the DNR building that database based on that electronic exploration that's happening? And I'm looking at our mining industry and how this could potentially be a database that could be an advantage to future mining exploration, future mining pieces. And I think there's some legislative pieces that would have to be put into place on that. I just want to throw that out there, because I think, as I think about that, drill center over in Hibbing is becoming a thing of the past with the electronic. Yeah, well, they're not drilling anymore. They're penetrating 2,000 feet with that Black Hawk helicopter that flew around this past summer. Explored some pretty vast areas of our county, and I don't know how that data is then captured. If we're permitting these types of activities, we as a county should be getting something out of it.
You know, we've worked quite a bit with the DNR. The DNR is pretty advanced on what they're doing, particularly in mineral
And that's the
exploration.
question, I guess.
And we've shared data with public agencies. We've shared data, and we've had a lot of shared.
In fact, with the DNR, it's gotten to a point where we're looking at possible direct connects to our SDE database.
Okay. I'm just looking for an advantage for mining industry.
So then we got a lot, of course, with the data sets, you know, we got the 400 data sets that, you know, we've got a lot of data that we're managing, looking into developing or enhancing those data sets for different QA/QC process to really make sure those databases are useful for all our business operations, and they got some high quality to them. And so we're continually managing a lot of these databases, or enhancing. Some of, like the assessors are converting their old Apex drawings from their old structures that they used to measure out in the field to the GIS system. So now you can do more land grading system, more analysis, to more automation in the future, and some other databases as well. This is our progress of our cadastral. Barb mentioned that in 2006 he approved a 5-year plan to develop the parcels, and I think that was probably the last time I was here presenting about the land records management plan and saying, in 5 years, we could be done with this thing. And look how close we are now. 4.5 years later, we're on schedule, on time, and on budget. And we've only got really the few townships around around here, and then just the northern area of the county. We have these 5 and 6s. The USDA through the Recovery Act got some funds for survey control. We're waiting for that, but theirs might be a couple of years, so we might have to go forward. But we're excited about it. It's been 200,000 parcels and lots of discrepancies, a lot of research, a lot of fixing, a lot of survey control, acquisition, and verifying out in the field to make the parcel layer better. But of course, the cadastral is one of our cornerstones databases because it's just not parcels, it's 20 databases all tied together. In GIS, in our parcels are also tied to your lots and blocks, and subdivisions are tied to corner control. So in GIS, they're all separate databases, but they're tied through topology. So if you say this PLS corner line is moving, do you also want to move the subdivision, lot, block, and parcel as well? And you say yes or no, it's going to update all those 4 databases. So it's a very smart database, very advanced database management. So we built it in a way to manage it very efficiently long term.
The 3, going back to that last map, Commissioner Forsman and I are very aware why those 3 parcels up north have been done. And that was the work that we're doing on the Voyager's Clean Water initiative. And Planning Department, GIS worked with the engineering firm. So we've already seen the application of that, at least Commissioner Forsman and I, on the VNP, Joint Powers Board.
Yeah, every private company, every engineering and architectural firm, just they look at our cadastral and they want more and more, because it's so useful in all their planning activities. And of course, as time went by, we've had to adjust these townships because survey control might come in faster, or we might have a problem. So from the beginning, original estimation of our boundaries were similar, but they've changed a little bit. But for the most part, we got some areas like around Aurora that are still undone. We've been some of course, we got a lot of cleanup and messes in some areas, and that'll go on for a while. And then another big pillar of the GIS system, or our county operations, is both the web services and the applications. That chart where I showed the enterprise approach from the data to transactional processing, we've got a lot of web services running in the county right now for different business lines. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking that data, massaging that data, pushing out to views for specific lines of business, from planners to environmental services to land grading systems for assessors to build new applications to really automate their process. So we're building views of that data in different looks and feel. And then of course pushing out in the applications. So where do we see all this going at the high level more and more? You know, we're going to continue to do what we're doing internally operations, but what's coming up that we should be aware of in the county that is really going to push other needs across the county? So the future is more and more is mobile operations.
Can we, before you get that to the future, the one piece that you haven't talked about is how we in this room can use this data.
We'll get to the portal as well. There's a lot of uses in terms of what your end use and need is, because we build all these services to the end user, such as for the end users, our planners might go to our zoning application to do the zoning as questions come in. Our planners might use it.
I'm not asking about them. You mentioned all those departments. What about me? What about the people at the table here? What about the people in our offices that want to use it? You said in a letter, on a memo from Barb Hayden on October 25th, it says, we recently launched the internal county operations.
That is for
How can I use that data for the following? A guy calls me and says, hey, listen, there's a piece of property in the city of Duluth that seems to be vacant at this particular point. It looks like the people are dead. Can you tell me whether or not they're dead? And if they are, when does this property go tax forfeit? How do I use this process?
I'll show you the portal application, which is the beginning of that.
That is the portal, the land records portal, and this is the GIS piece, and we're going to get to that, and that's the next portion of the presentation.
It's exactly what we're talking about.
We'll hurry it up
Yep.
because we are running over.
So it's essentially more mobile operations, in the field operations. You can see all kinds of different activities in mobile. More AVL, connecting to AVL of all our operations. And also web services, which is all our views of our data. So our data is used in the specific lines of business. Land department uses Google to geocode their land sales into Google. So right now, this is live right now, that the land department uses their tracts of land for sale into Google. So we're using a lot of third-party products as well. And then Sheriff's 911 data, all their data is coming into the crime mapping system to map all the criminal data across the county. Kind of the future, we're going to continue to manage our data, continued land records integration, continued improved workflow, continued legacy application integration, new application development, portal, etc. We'll kind of talk about the concept of portal, where we're headed with the portal. Also web services, and then continue the public safety integration, because that's where it's heavily used at this point. Of course, challenges. There isn't, we're not in a bubble. We've got challenges, and of course, data development, acquisition, and maintenance and enhancements are always a challenge because of the spatial size of our county. Our infrastructure demands GIS is a different platform. We're not pushing through little bits of data. We're pushing through lots of bits of data, and so that stresses our infrastructure a little bit more than most systems. The county size, you brought up the point of missing cell phone coverages, our data connections, our remoteness of our area. We have different issues than most urban areas have that are 10 square miles. We've got to build an infrastructure that accommodates those gaps in services. So it's an extra level of infrastructure that we won't have. And then standards. Standards is always a challenge because we've been in silos for so many years in all our databases and our programs. We've got to institute standards that really make everything zing together. And then data integration is making that not only standards, but also the data work together. So then the next piece, let's switch from the GIS system to one of the applications that uses GIS, but not as the main tool, but a tool, but also the portal is bridging the gap between all the tabular data in the county from all the silos to all the GIS, and is bringing it into one interface. And this is only, before I want to talk, this is only the beginning of a long-term process of the build-out of this portal application. We've got the main system up, we've got the security built in, we've got it built to where now it's going to be built out by departments to really start connecting data and the power of GIS more and more into this system. So what is the portal? You always hear this land information portal, GIS. Well, there are two different distinct issues. The portal is essentially a one-stop shop for all land record data and documents. Irregardless of the department, it's a one-stop shop. Image documents, data, reports, and GIS all in together in one system, rather than going to 10 different systems to get data for your particular question. And that's going to essentially, it bridges the gap between the tabular and geospatial worlds and brings it together in one system. So what's the portal basics? Right now it's an internal application. It'll be, as we get more stabilized, more data connected, we're looking at now is bringing it out to more subscribers in the future, and the plans are starting to be laid for that. But right now it's an internal application, but it will be coming out more and more to the public in different facets. The portal really allows for one interface to access multiple departments' data. So we're really building one interface. So if you have a question, you really question the search of the portal, and it'll answer your questions and bring back data from all the departments. So what it's doing is mining the databases of all these departments across the county and GIs and bringing it together into one interface, rather than before you have a question and you're like, there's 7, 8, 9, 10 applications I have to access for this one question. It's almost silly in a way. Traditionally, we've also had separate applications used to access department data. So what we've done in the past is we created these data silos, and then we created applications on top of the silos as all separate systems, and they never talk to each other. And then you build tools on all these applications, and you're making redundant tools, redundant databases, a lot of inefficiencies in the way we do business. We're really starting to highlight kind of consolidation of these silos. We're not actually physically consolidating, but we're bringing down the silos of all these departments with this interface. So, you know, it doesn't really matter what department you're in, you're going to get that data wherever you are. It's really eliminating the silos. And it's also consolidating, bringing together departments, because now departments have to do standards across their database and utilize the same mainframe to really connect to data, search data, and standardize their data as well. And then this leads to significant gains in productivity, because now a person's staff can search one place and have results come back very quickly. Before, it would take weeks to search one issue, and I'll kind of show you some of those issues as well. So essentially, what does the land information do, this one-stop shop portal application do? It's really eliminating the silos, like I said. It's creating enterprise tools. Before, these silo applications would build the similar tools in different programming formats, so you had to manage multiple tool sets and different functionalities in all these silos. Well, this is starting to begin the process of building one tool set for the county to consume into one interface. And ultimately, of course, that improves the responses to any questions, because now they're not mining 10 different applications, they're mining one application for the information quickly. And of course, it institutes standards, standard technology platforms, standard reporting services, standard coding, standard, all kinds of standards across the county so we can manage this a little bit easier in the future. But also, GIS is embedded. It's also, the nice thing is, the very nice thing about this is connected to our Active Directory, which means we can have secure searches and secure data coming back through this portal. So you can have a sexual predator search that only certain people see in the county, but it's built into the framework of the county, but you don't see it. Others do. So the application itself is very dynamic of what you see based on your login. And then, of course, our long-term goal is the legacy application integration, because this is where the huge savings are going to occur in the future. We don't have to build all these new applications. We can build lightweight applications that connect to this enterprise tool set. So essentially, the county staff comes in, they connect to the portal, and they connect to all the databases across the county. Simple before, it was very complicated. They have to go after multiple ways. And this is much more streamlined under the hood, but also to the end user. Essentially, the portal, all these databases, is provides ability to search, query, analyze, display, map, print, and report all kinds of data, and bringing all that together into one interface. So what is the portal, and how does it function? You know, right off the bat, the portal is a very powerful application. It's not a simple department application. It's built out to multiple departments. So very first screen, you can see the login. You can be logged in. It's very complicated, but the newsletter kind of explains the different situations of this portal. But you can search just about any databases in every department. You've got the department tabs right here. Different departments are starting to wire up their searches more and more and more. So as time goes by, every couple months, you'll see new searches pop up. And that's really connecting the searches to the department. And they allow the view of those searches to each department. So all these panels here are secured on your login ID. So you see whatever search criteria you get to see based on your login. So if you're 911 operations or AGC doing different searches, you only see that search capability. If you do a search, you get results back, and we can stack the results. So within the results, you can have lots of results come back. Right here, we did a result. You can save these results. You can view these results on a map, selected on a map. You can zoom to the map. You can select all, zoom to all the structures. You can create reports. You can export this to SVC, CSV files, email results, or print labels. And I'll kind of highlight some of these print labels because that's a huge productivity gain. But this interface, once you do a search, it automatically, if there's multiple databases coming back, it's going to come back with a search result of all the databases coming back. And from this screen, you can do a lot of functionality as well. And I'll kind of show you some of the uses of it. So what's the flexibility of just the search screen? The search screen allows a lot of capability, and the searches that we have tied in the front end are very powerful. So for example, under the Auditors tab, let's say we just do a SVCT description search, and it's a drop-down menu of all the CVTs in the county. So you do a drop-down, you say, I want to search Lakewood Township, but I also want to search all the delinquent property in Lakewood Township. So I press go. So what happens, it comes back with all the databases, all the delinquent properties within Lakewood Township. So it came back with 74 records in Lakewood Township with delinquent property. And from here, I can go to individual property details. So I can click one of these properties. What it'll do is it'll bring me the details of that property. And so all these specific data sets are also tied to very secured panels. So whatever panel you have access to, you get clearance to see that data. So as you click these tabs, all this data from all these departments are coming through these tabs based on that one parcel. And so what we're doing is so this is the main screen. So once you click on this parcel, what it's doing is mining all those databases. And it's coming back and saying, okay, all those databases from all these departments are coming back to this portal. It's coming to this screen, and it says, okay, this is your main PIN, this is your site address, owner of record, taxpayer. And then from here you can zoom the parcel report, or you can view all kinds of other data with other department, whichever department it's in.
I can do that,
Yes?
or can John Q. Citizen do that?
Not yet, because this is an internal application, but we're
Thank you.
looking at different
Okay.
products,
Okay.
different processes. So then our goal right now is bringing all the recorded documents in here, so you can see abstract torrents. We can bring all the image documents in the county from all the departments. So we don't got them all there, but we're headed there. So you can, as you click on different tabs might be blank right now because we're wiring things up. But all this is the interface. If you have a question, this is the data. This is whatever the county has is coming through the screen. And so it's really becoming a one-stop shop for data. But it doesn't have just data, tabular data. We can also create reports. So if you need a quick report, we can create reports. We're implementing a kind of standard report template. And over time, we're going to be building reports for every department to really help automate their business lines and their processes for their whatever project they have or whatever their duty for their department is, that they can help automate the reports.
Go ahead.
Everything here is public data. Anybody could get.
Yeah, this is all
access to
public
this.
data, correct. But they can't have access yet because it's internal right now.
And you know, that's been a huge part of the discussion. There isn't an intent to make that type of data that easily available to the public, but it is internal. And note what Darren said, everything's logged on, so you can go back. If somebody pulled certain information, you can go in and see who kind of did that retrieve on that data. So we're viewing Mark might want to speak up more, a situation, where you deal with attorneys and closing companies would be similar to the subscription-based system that we have now. It's very secure system. And what would be available to the public would be similar to what's probably on our public website now, as those types of searches.
But somebody could come into our office and do this search
No.
on a computer here.
No, that's not anything that we have set up. We would use it, like, say, for our planning commission cases, or, you know, I think if you have constituent inquiries, we would hope your staff to be able to retrieve data that you could respond to. You would know, are there building permits there? You know, is this delinquent property? Is this tax forfeited property? So it's information that's available there, but it's not something that's available for the general public at this point to come in and do searches on. And if it is, it would be limited to what would be readily available.
Okay. I guess you still haven't really answered my question. I want to find, you know, that piece of property you have there. I want to get information on it because, you know, somebody has complained about this property, it's not being well taken care of, it looks like it's run down, it's yada yada, whatever. I'm John Q. citizen walking in, I want to know who owns it so that I can, you know, try and get a hold of them and complain, because I know it's an absentee landlord. Can you get that information?
Yes, you can get that information. However, they usually come to our office or another office to get that information. Remember that this is a work in progress, and one of the areas that we looked at is different subscription levels based on who needs access to specific information. There will be some information available to the public, but yes, they can come in. They can come into our office as an example, want to know who owns XYZ property. We can pull up the data and tell them right away.
But see, you know, part of my problem is, I recall when there were townships in St. Louis County that did not allow flyovers to be done at their township, to add them to the pictures that we had. You know, of course now Google and whoever can just zone in on that house. But, you know, are we beyond what we should be doing with the information that we should be allowing to just the general public? Are we?
Well, I understand what you're saying. There's privacy and access concerns,
right,
and certain, you know, so we discussed as a land record work group, we're very sensitive to that issue. And so that's part of who gets what information, what's internal, what's external. You know, there's some GIS parcel layers that will show you the rooms and the houses and those types of things. You know, we're not getting into that, but there's certain identifiable information that will be available to us, and the land records work group, which kind of sits at a 50-foot level, we're very, very aware of that.
I mean, that picture of somebody in their bathtub, I don't think it should get them.
But as far as flying over the townships, it's already there. Google does it, everybody else already does it, so it's already there.
And I think
it just feels like to me. It's getting
Big Brother has
weirder and weirder all the time.
And that's
I wrote something down. It's just a little levity because we've been a long time on this subject, but I can just see some legislation we're going to have to go after, John, that would prevent somebody from requiring that a baby be implanted with a little GIS thing in there somewhere on their body, so that for the rest of their life they can always be tracked.
Mr. Chair.
Could be optional.
Mr. Chair. Since
And when the barcodes come on our forehead.
Our foreheads that were really
these little
I mean,
sidebars, I mentioned that Big Brother has arrived, and Deputy Administrator Eckenberg said he's now a great grandpa.
To kind of go to your point, we're building some of these, we can build tools or reports that really, if a staff comes in, we can have a general report that you can give out to the public. Those are simple stuff for us to do.
Okay.
For how we're building this portal is why it's internal first, is we're getting all the data wired up and then determining what's appropriate to view and what's not. And that's where the discussion is headed right now.
Yep.
So kind of going from there, you can also map all the delinquent properties as well. So you can take that database and map it. From the mapping, you can also do mailing labels within minutes, sometimes seconds. You can do a mailing label. And so going back to those search screen, all the searches that we can have, we can map, we can mailing label, we can do all kinds of download of that data for all kinds of operations. In the past, this has been a very difficult thing to do for any level of business operation in the county. So then, of course, we kind of showed you this, all the recorded documents will start coming through the new imaging system. So any recorded image document will start coming through the system, kind of the layout again. And then you can map it, go to the map, and you can map the data. As you zoom in, the details of the parcel comes up, a little bit about the owner of the parcel. You have some tools over here as well. You can see the view of the layout of the land, toggle the imagery to see the layout of the land, and you can query a parcel, who owns it, and get all the details of a parcel. One other thing I want to show.
Where is that now? This is just a...
This is just another tab. So we did the search, results, map, and now it's the map tab. So it's all the tabs up there. You can toggle between all 4 tabs. And so you can, whatever tab you want to search on and go to, you can just zoom and scan around. So I want to show you, the next example, I want to show you how we're integrating like Google. Everybody talks about Google. So we get a call in coming in that, hey, something's happened at this property. What does the property area look like? I have to go out there for a site visit. We can also integrate it with Google Maps. So under this little toolbar up here, there's a zoom to and a go to, and you click on map, and it's going to bring up the XY coordinates of that area, and you can drop the Google map right into the road. So this is Greenwood Town Hall, right in the coordinates. So you can integrate third-party products, see the situation on the ground using essentially Google as an integrated piece of this whole application. And it just comes up as another fly or tab up there that you can toggle back and forth and do your work. This is an example of our identify button in the map. When you click on this identify button, you can bring up a lot of details. You click on a parcel, it comes up over here, and you can zoom to the details map. You can click this, and it'll bring you the details of all the county database details of that parcel. And you can do a lot of other stuff. You can buffer that parcel. You give me a virtual buffer of 300 feet, 500. We do this 500 to 1,000 times a year in the county for adjoining owners, sales, planning commission, variances. We do a buffer. In the past, it was very, very difficult to do and time-consuming, days and weeks on some mailing labels. Now we can automate it. Within seconds, we can just say, show me a 500-foot buffer, point it, and it'll automatically create that buffer and put all the labels right there, and you can export to SVC or the print labels. So you can really create buffers of projects, roads, activities, townships, just about any database we got, we can map or create all these other, utilize all these other tools. So of course, the end result is mailing labels for different activities. So in our land records management plan, this was one of the cornerstones for a tool database that would huge productivities across the county. Our future build out of this portal application, right now we just rolled out the main site. Right now we're in the first column. It's a basic data viewer. As we start instituting more standards, connecting more databases, our goal is to we're starting to implement this number 2 column, enhanced data viewer, where we start bringing in more of the county department databases coming through this portal, image documents, putting maybe some more graphical interface and bring more GIS web services or different views of GIS views into the map window. And in the future, more analysis and reporting and more reports coming through for different activities. As people got an issue come up, we can create reports. And then furthermore, more dashboard technology instituted in the portal, as well as more new workflows across the county and integration of existing legacy applications intertwined within the technology framework. So how are we viewed kind of regionally? The county is actually viewed very positively in the region for our GIS, where we're headed and what we're doing, and kind of what activities are happening. From the planning side to the data management side, from the organization side to the integration of all this technology and kind of utilization in all our systems, and also the portal development. The portal application is a very unique application that it took a lot to pull off, essentially, in terms of communication coordination with the departments. And it's a very unique application because people are still building applications out there that are very silo-based. There's very few integrated applications, so the portal is the first step in the long process of the county. And lastly, I kind of want to give you a sincere thank you. It's been a good couple of years for the county for a successful GIS system. Of course, first to the county board, to the administration, and to the directors, and of course the county staff. And surely appreciate it.
Darren, 2 questions. One, so our bordering counties, so like you were going to do a 1,000-foot search, you know, on a parcel next to Lake County. Okay, but are they working on it, Lake and Carlton?
They don't have any, they might have their internal way of doing it, but they couldn't query our side.
Yeah.
So, you know, as it becomes more regional, the data sets are regional, we could do it, and it's integrated in our databases, we could do it, but that's a whole nother, how do you maintain those parcels coming in, because they're changing all the time too, so it'd be a great.
One of the things that we have done is we have been worked very cooperatively with Douglas County. Douglas County has pretty much taken our framework for a plan, not on the land records portal, but on the GIS, and they've used that, which saves them a lot in Carlton County, and we certainly would do that with any other. I think Itasca is probably more advanced. You know, Carlton and Douglas are in line with us, and Itasca has a more advanced system than some of the other neighboring counties.
And then I see you have trainings coming up, but they're both on Tuesdays. We've got this darn other obligation on Tuesdays.
Yeah, we do have training on the GIS side, desktop, and also the portal in our employee relations tab. So, yeah, we'll have to. I never noticed that.
That's like I was just complaining about the flu shots that given on both of the board, one was the board workshop and the other was the board day. And they were done.
Any other questions or?
Overtime.
Well, it's a good presentation, thank you. You know, I would hope that though, as you know, through this process, you've identified, you know, policy questions and the challenges and revenue potential issues that I guess this body needs to be tuned into, so that we need to, you know, whatever things we need to do on the policy level can be accomplished, so that we can facilitate greater use of this and revenue streams that come with it and all the other issues that are relevant to us as policymakers.
And one of the things is we do need to spend a lot of time cleaning our internal data. We were working with the land department and just presenting the number of tax, or the publicly owned, county publicly owned lands in the city of Duluth, and how many, they were listed 20 different ways, the sorts, you know, it's by Minnesota, spelled out Minnesota, you know, so you can't go in and do a single search, and that's really, we've been working a lot with the land records portal group on data cleanup, because remember, Google Maps wasn't wrong on the border, the data set was wrong. So whoever managed that data set had the wrong data, because all they're doing is taking and visually displaying what data. And I think, as Darren says, we have a lot of warts and scars and things that we really need to clean up, and it's been positive. You know, we're looking at, we have the wrong lake numbers maybe on some of our you know, tax things, and there's just been a lot of stuff that we're discovering, and hopefully.
And how nimble is this when, say, data changes? Just
Very nimble.
it is. Okay, so you have
Yeah, just identifying the problem and somebody fix it in their database. That's
You've heard me say this before, we've said this before, that this is going to fundamentally change the way we do business in St. Louis County, both from an internal and external perspective. And there are things that need to happen internally from a policy-making decision, as far as the data integration and entering the data from a land records perspective. You started moving down that path a little bit by starting to create a public records property valuation commission or department. As Bard mentioned, once you do this, it shows our blemishes, so we know there's lots of blemishes out there that we have to clean up. And as a matter of fact, when St. Louis County was surveyed, it's a true story, in the dead of winter, they did, some of the surveyors way back when didn't want to, you know, go out into the backcountry because it was too cold, and so they kind of guesstimated. I mean, we actually have sections, and they're supposed to be square. We have some sections that kind of more or less go like that. So there are a lot of those types of issues. We may be looking at setting up a boundary boundary commission. There's legislation that's permissive of a boundary commission, where if somebody has boundary disputes with GPS handheld devices, now people are calling and saying, my GPS is telling me my neighbor's kitchen is on my lot line, what can I do?
And sometimes they are.
Yeah, sometimes they are. And so when those two things happen, you have two choices. One, you get together with your neighbor and come up with a new legal description. And if your neighbor refuses, you can hire an attorney, which is an expensive process. But a more streamlined process would be considering setting up a boundary commission, which is made up of real estate professionals who sit on a board and say yay and nay, and this is what the property line should be. So there's all sorts of things that need to happen internally to make this functional and to the highest and best use. But this literally will transform the way we do
It's
business.
called the Solomon Commission.
Pardon?
They call it the Solomon Commission.
King Sullivan.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, one thing that came to mind when we wrote this, we're talking about, obviously there's going to be some impacts on FTEs, people being able to be more cost effective and efficient. And I just wonder how this intertwines with our personnel system. We have a dinosaur of a civil service system where everyone's pigeonholed into those functions. How does it work together?
That's a great question. That's, one of the things we've talked about is, what happens is, there's a 20% say, there's not a whole FT, there maybe is a 20% here and a 20% there. And one of the challenges for administration and us as department directors is starting to look at different, we don't need everybody, in a department that does that. And how do we start to change that? And I think those are our opportunities and challenges looking forward on how we're going to do that. And, one of the best examples, and I know that 911 would be happy to share, is they had two people that were doing addressing, would physically go out on site, and it took an enormous amount of time to address. Well, we work with them in developing a web services where they can go out, measure, and do things. If they're able to do, 95, 98% of it from a desktop now versus, and there's, you always have, there's always unique situations, there's human elements where some stuff still needs an on-site look at it, but taking that down from every single property, someone going out on every single property. So there's a lot of opportunities and challenges we have to start looking at how we do work differently.
Well, very good. That's tremendously informative. We look forward to. We're not going to wait another 5 years though for the next one. I want to hear just how things are advancing. So thank you very much. I think everyone's questions were answered. We need to take a little bit of a break so John can set up his PowerPoint presentation. I'm sure he has one of legislation. Okay, so we'll take 5 minutes and then come right back.
Hey, John, how are we doing?
behind on is the 2011 legislative agenda. Just to throw around some ideas, I believe John solicited input from commissioners a while back, and we'll allow him to present that. Gary, do you have anything to lead into that?
Just a little preparatory information. This will be coming to the board probably the first meeting in December, I think we'd like to, if not by, I don't think we have it on the agenda by the 23rd, since this is the meeting week before the 23rd. But we want to have this on the committee whole agenda so the board can approve its legislative agenda for 2011. Just so you know, there's already been the first meeting of the planning group of the St. Louis and Duluth at the Capitol Days. The first one was just last Friday. The second one will be coming up this Friday, I believe. Or is it the 10th, John?
I believe it's the 10th.
Every 2 weeks, perhaps. So we're certainly not too early to be talking about our legislative agenda. And as Commissioner Rocker said, you have all had some opportunity to provide information through the solicitation that John did through emails, as he did with department heads. And I expect we're going to get a little bit of the look at the lay of the land as well with the election from last week. So,
okay. Thank you. Before you, you have a couple documents. One is a comprehensive list of all the feedback that I did get from you and from the department heads. The other document is a recommendation of what the priorities should be. And the third document has both on one side the Dayton budget plan and on the back side the Emmer budget plan. And I think both of these we're going to see something not too drastically different from the new Republican majority in the House and Senate as far as the Emmer budget plan, and then of course the Dayton budget plan. The governor has to present his budget to the next legislature in early February, so we'll see something not too drastically different from what you see before you here. But before we get into all this detail, I think it's really important that we kind of go over the drastic change in the landscape that occurred on November 2nd on the political landscape. Some have likened it to a tsunami. I think that may be understating the issue, because it was easily the biggest change in, for example, state legislatures across the nation in as long as anyone can remember. 1974, post-Watergate, was the previous record in change in the number of legislators that were defeated nationwide, and 2010 surpassed that. So it was really, really a watershed year. Just to give you an example of what happened in Minnesota, in the Minnesota House there were 87 Democrats and 47 Republicans, and after the election it switched to a Republican majority of 72 to 62. That's a net gain of 25 seats. The number of freshmen in the 134 House, there are 31 Republican freshmen and 3 Democrat freshmen. Senate, not too, even more drastically different actually than the House. The Senate had a 46-21 majority, the DFL did, and after the election they now have a minority, and the Republican majority is 37 to 30, so that's a net gain of 16 seats. That's 21 Republican freshmen in the Senate and 3 Democrat freshmen. So it's literally a third of the entire Senate is different now. And there's so many new Republican legislators that they don't have enough veterans, those that have served more than one term, to be committee chairs. So they are literally trying to match up with the House, the committee, so that everything's in sync. And they're having trouble. Today I think they're going to at least name the framework for that. By the end of the week they should have the committee chairs at least named. And they're struggling right now to find enough experienced Republican senators to chair the committees that they have to, which is just wild when you think about it. Again, for the last 40 years, or 38 years, this will be 40 years, the DFL on the Senate side has controlled the legislature. And so this will be a first time in 40 years that the Republicans will control the Senate. And I'll tell you, I heard Senator Bach on the radio talking about, as my new minority leader in the Senate, what a difficult job he has right now, because there are staff people working in the Senate. I mean, I was an intern in the state Senate, I think in like 1977, 78, and there are people that are still working there to this day, and now they're going to be out of a job because of the change in the majority. The new majority will get a lot more staff than what the Democrats have, so the Democrats have to lay off over half their staff. And they also have to change offices from that beautiful Capitol building where the Senate has had the monopoly of having those nice offices. Now they've got to move across the street to the state office building and be all crowded in on the first floor and in one wing of the first floor, and the Republican senators are just relishing the thought of being able to move into those nice offices that the Senate DFL has had all these years. So I think the Senate DFL is kind of kicking themselves at the moment, because there have been efforts over the past several years to try to kind of share some of that space in the Capitol with the Republican minority, and the Senate DFL was against that. So I'm sure the Senate DFL is kicking themselves now. As far as the leadership, Kurt Zellers from Maple Grove will be the new Speaker of the House, and the Senate Majority Leader will be Amy Koch. Amy is from Wright County, and neither of them have been around that long, less than 10 years each of them, so they're not exactly the true veterans that you picture getting those kind of positions. I already mentioned Tom Bach is the Senate Minority Leader now, and Representative Paul Thiessen is the House Minority Leader. And remember, Bach and Thiessen were both candidates for governor this year, so it's kind of an interesting dynamic to see that. As far as important dates that we're going to be looking at, one of the immediate dates is, I think it's December 2nd or December 3rd. The next budget forecast is coming out, the November forecast technically. And although you saw reports this week where state revenues for the last month or something were again up somewhere, and they're saying since July 1, state revenues are actually up about $100 million from the projections. And also the FMAP money that Congress did approve finally, which was about $264 million in additional medical assistance money coming to Minnesota. Between those two, on the surface, it just seems that there can't be another deficit coming with that extra revenue that wasn't counted on from the FMAP money and this extra $100 million in projections. But the problem is, the state economist spoke at the MICA administrators meeting just a week or so ago, and as he explains it, the problem is that in the forecast, because of the Bush tax cuts expiring at the end of this year, they anticipated that a lot of individuals would try to take advantage of the lower tax rate in the last few months of this calendar year. And so they anticipated several hundred millions of dollars coming into the state coffers, capital gains. And as a result of it now looking like the Bush tax cuts will be extended at least temporarily for another year or two, they're not anticipating that extra revenue coming in. So that sets up a likely scenario where, once again, we're going to have a deficit announced for the November forecast. And that, because of the Supreme Court ruling, once we have an approved balanced budget agreed upon by the legislature and the governor, then the governor has the right to unallot if there is a deficit. So this now means the governor will have the right to unallot in early December, which, if he chooses to unallot, he doesn't have to. He can can say, well, this is something that the legislature is almost ready to come in, and we can just add this to the existing problems that they have with the budget. And, you know, I don't think it's going to be a huge number, but nevertheless, even if it's $100 million, we know in the past what $100 million, usually it means local government aid and county program aid as a big slice of that cut. So I'm just saying we need to be prepared for a bad number coming our way in early December and the potential of another unallotment. Meanwhile, of course, the governor's race is not officially over. I think that most of the experts anyways feel that the distance, roughly 9,000 votes, is mathematically impossible to make up. If you look at the Frank and Coleman race, it was literally 400 or 500 votes, so this is in magnitude of at least 10, if not 20 times that. And the improvements that we made to election law since that election really minimizes the number of absentee ballots that will be spoiled, or are spoiled even, because they've already been looked through at one time already by all 87 counties on election day. So I think that you know, we should see by mid-December candidate Dayton as the likely certified governor, but that doesn't mean that candidate Emmer can't still file an election challenge, legal challenge, over various issues. And the big risk there is the way the Constitution reads is it appears that the governor the existing governor will continue to stay in office until an official new governor is named, and that opens the door to the possibility of an all-Republican legislature coming in on January 4th with the existing Republican governor, and they can pass things and sign them into law that could, you know, have major impacts on the budget and things like that. Now, to the credit of both the new Senate Majority Leader and House Speaker, they both have stated that they don't anticipate wanting to do anything like that, anything budget related, etc. They just don't think that it's proper to do this with a true lame duck governor until the new governor is named. They don't want to go into that area, but it doesn't mean that they still couldn't do some, say, non-budget related things. A couple of things. One is redistricting that's been mentioned. Redistricting, obviously, the entire legislature probably would be too high of a hill to climb, especially in that short time period. It's difficult enough to get your entire caucus on board for a redistricting plan, so I don't see that happening. But they could do congressional district lines. That would be a lot easier to do, so that's not far-fetched. The other, okay, I'm sorry. We'll know by the end of this year. When Tom Gillespie came up and spoke to us about a month ago, he stated that they will have, by the end of this year, the numbers from the Census Bureau and determination as to whether Minnesota loses a congressional district or not. So we'll know that. The other date that's really important early in the session is January 15th. And besides being someone famous birthday, Martin Luther King and myself, that date is also the date in statute that says that the new governor, whoever it is, has the right by executive order to get Minnesota included in the early opt-in for medical assistance. And so I guess there could be an incentive for the Republicans to drag this thing out till at least January 15th, because if obviously Governor Plenty's not going to sign that, he stated that already. So if they get past that date, that would basically prevent Minnesota from doing that early MA opt-in, and that would be fortunate from a county standpoint, because a lot of this GAMC problem then, as we know, falls back into our lap. So other key dates then is early February, I mentioned the governor's budget is due, and obviously, when you look at this document here that says the Dayton budget plan and the Emmer budget plan, I think the Dayton budget plan, as it will be submitted, will mostly be dead on arrival because there's a Republican majority in the House and Senate now, and they're not going to go out of their way to pass a Democrat's budget plan, especially since neither side is in, I mean, they're as diametrically opposed as can be as far as revenue. The new majority in the House and Senate are saying, we don't think we have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. And so they want to deal with no new tax increases. And of course, Governor Dayton, Governor-elect Dayton, if that should be, he, in the campaign anyways, proposed sizable income tax increases, especially on the top 10%. So kind of at a point where I think when it comes to the budget, I don't think either side appreciates the enormity of the problem. If you look at the current budget right now, the current biennial budget is $30 billion roughly. Because of the one-time money that we have received from the federal government in the stimulus bill for medical assistance, for K-12 to keep more teachers employed, and for higher ed to keep tuition down, there's about $3 billion of that one-time money. So although we got a $30 billion base, in effect we have a $33 billion current budget. Now, obviously the legislature was not in the mood to try to make the cuts that they needed to get us closer to that $30 billion figure this last legislative session. So really the working number should be $33 billion, because if you don't use that as your base, then you have to cut that at least that $2 billion out of medical assistance. You've got to cut a lot of teachers, that funding for K-12, and tuition obviously would have to jump. Now you hear the talk about the projected revenue increase for this coming biennium is roughly 8%. Well, do the math. Roughly 8% from 30 billion to 33 billion pretty much consumes that all the growth that is there has already been spoken for, just to backfill that one-time money that we received from the federal government. And then on top of that, you have projected growth of overall, and this would include that 8% in already anticipated revenues, but the anticipated growth in spending just to take care of the entitlements and everything is 18%. Now, obviously, 8 of that 18% is the stimulus money that needed to be backfilled, and the other 10% roughly is new spending to take care of the additional, I think there's 14,000 additional students K-12 system needs to absorb. Tuition at the college level, higher ed, is estimated to have to go up 15% if there's no new revenue. And the medical inflation, of course, that's there for medical assistance, that's the lion's share, clearly, of most of that increase. So the real number, I mentioned the 30 billion, the 33 billion, the real number is closer to 37, 38 billion is what they need in order to make things balance. So when you hear about the $6 or $7 billion deficit, that's all you can quickly extrapolate that 6 or 7 billion. We go from 30 billion, which is the base right now, and the projection is we need 37, maybe 38 billion dollars. So that hopefully helps you get your arms around the enormity of what we're dealing with. It amounts to about 20% of the state general fund. And again, you've got candidate Emmer that came in with an all cuts budget, and you can see from, if you look at this document, the Emmer budget plan, what he's proposing now. Disregard that top portion, which is new tax reductions. I think that that's not likely to happen now in light of the enormity of the deficit that they're trying to solve. But if you look at the expenditure reductions that he's proposing to do, this gives us an idea of what we're facing, will be facing in the likely budget that the new Republican majority in the legislature will pass, because many of those people helped candidate Emmer put his budget proposal together. Now, these are just targets and the detail isn't there, but I think this gives us a rough idea of what we're facing. In K-12 education, these are all negative numbers, by the way, about $525 million cut. And he's calling it a freeze, though, because that's the additional federal money that came in, and he doesn't think that should count. So he's saying minus the federal money, so we'll cut that $525 million that came in from the feds, and we'll call it a freeze for K-12 for the next 2 years. Postponement of the K-12 funding shift. Now there's one area that I think both candidate Dayton and Emmer are going to be showing a lot of flexibility, because you don't have to do that K-12 funding shift all in one biennium. Certainly, the last time we had a big problem like this in the early 80s, it took over a decade to pay back that funding shift. So I think no matter who the next governor is, you're not going to see them try to solve the $1.2 billion shift all in one biennium. They'll at most take $200 million of that as a way to make a down payment on that debt. Higher education, $417 million in cuts. And here's the huge one that could really, really negatively impact us. $2.2 billion in health and human services. I heard Speaker-elect Zellers on the radio the other day. He said their priority will be to protect education, nursing homes, the developmentally disabled, and other vulnerable citizens. Well, the health and human services, that's the lion's share of that $2.2 billion. That's where the cuts have to come from. I don't know where you get cuts in health and human services other than eliminating, our measly roughly $30 million that counties are still receiving, and Children and Community Services Block Grant, other categoricals. I mean, our chemical dependency, mental health, all those things could just be eliminated, and it still is just a drop in a bucket when it comes to making up $2.2 billion in cuts. So medical assistance is where it's at, and the vast majority of medical assistance funding goes to keep grandma in a nursing home or take care of vulnerable adults. So that's a huge problem to make those kind of savings. So it'll be interesting to see when the detail comes out on that target. Also, the next huge item that will impact us is property tax aids and credits, and that's a little over $1.1 billion in cuts is what they were proposing. And if they stay with that, that's about 1/3 of all of the property tax aids and credits that are out there. Now, where that leaves us especially vulnerable is not only would St. Louis County be the recipient of what other counties would get, county program aid. We know we're all going to lose a big chunk of additional chunk of our county program aid, but there's a couple other aids and credits that are kind of unique to certainly this corner of the state. Disparity reduction aid. That is a program that's still on the books. There's about $20 million that is set statewide, and the vast majority comes here to northeastern Minnesota, again because of our low property wealth in our communities. This is a way to help those communities so that property taxes don't have to skyrocket to pay for that. So of the disparity reduction aid, I would say that over half of the statewide disparity reduction aid comes to northeastern Minnesota. And in addition to that, for commissioners here, who represent the taconite relief area in this building that we're sitting in here, there's $80+ million a year that of taconite production tax revenue that goes to this agency, and as you know, we as a county receive over $10 million of that revenue ourselves annually to help out with our road and bridge and other property tax relief. A huge chunk of that $80 million goes to the taconite homestead tax relief, which, if that were eliminated, would more than double the property taxes on literally every homestead up here. What I'm saying is that although this is popularly considered a program that really is not a state program, it's in lieu of property taxes, a taconite production tax. We have seen efforts in the past to raid the IRRB fund, and as sure as we're all sitting here right now, you're going to see the new Republican majority make a similar effort again. And I think it's in our best interest to make sure that we defend and assist our legislators to make sure that we defend the taconite production revenue, because there will be efforts to move much of that money statewide to help out with the current deficit. Now, do I think in the final end they'll be victorious? No, but are they going to use it as a major bargaining chip? Of course they are. So it's something which we need to be aware of and make sure that we let everyone know that you're also cutting St. Louis County too when you try to raid that fund.
Well, you'll see a big change of basis on that board too, here.
Well, there will be changes. Yes, the majority leader in the Senate and the Speaker both each get at least one appointment, and the Governor gets at least one appointment to that board. So you'll see changes there alone. Plus, I think, I'm just trying to think who was the furthest legislator that was serving. Well, Lauren Soberg, for example. Lauren Soberg will be replaced, whether it's the woman that beat him or someone else. I could see perhaps Larry Howes from the Walker area. He's been on the IRRB before, him possibly being on it. But
how about Frederick Hall?
Well, I don't think the Lieutenant Governor.
Right.
But yes, someone will have to replace her too. So. Yeah, I'd have to look at the bylaws that Keith, maybe you're more familiar than I am with
Yeah.
We've done the count, but the most important piece will be the gubernatorial appointment of commissioners.
Yeah. So I just want to alert everyone to the fact that when you look at these numbers, this is, if you're not going to have new revenue, these are devastating numbers to our county governments, and we have to be prepared to fight and fight hard to resist and tell our story. One of the things that, well, I guess when we get into our detailed items, we'll talk about PILT, but that's another example of where PILT, even though it might only be $5 million as a projected increase, it's something which, technically it would be considered a property tax aid and credit, should be. So that's something that could easily be cut too as part of this. So we are exposed 7 ways to Sunday when it comes to a budget plan that resembles anything close to what candidate Amber had proposed. And again, the detail in each of these target areas is what really matters, and we don't know that detail yet, but I think we can speculate safely on some of that. Yes, ma'am.
Just one question, John. You know these things better than I do, and I'm just thinking about us up north there, and stuff, and I'm really thinking outside the box, and it probably would be a little bit ludicrous, but nevertheless, I'd still want to say it. if a person switches, if a representative or a senator switches from one party to another, can they switch back to the party they used to be at some future time there? And I'm really thinking outside the box. I mean, I'm looking at, you know, right now we've got, I'll just say it because I know that this out of my wacky head there, but let's say that Senator Bach decided that he was going to be a Republican for a couple of years there and stuff like that. He would be in the majority and he might be able to, for St. Louis County. Now, St. Louis County, I'm only talking about us. For us, it would give us a heck of a lot more clout down at the Capitol in the sense that we would be able to get some things done. I'm worried, very, very worried about the $80 million worth of IRRB money. I'm very worried about the education portion of it because we're on a short shift. I mean, we're on the short end of almost every educational thing that comes out there. And I always had such an extremely comfortable feeling whenever I got to the Capitol, that when I was able to talk to the tax chair, talk to the man that was on the DNR committee, and I know that I'm totally out of the box here and stuff, but sometimes I keep remembering that game we played when we were kids. If you can't beat them, join them there. And I mean,
Well, I will, to respond to you, I think if there was a one vote difference,
yeah.
then you want something like that, but it's more than a one vote difference in both bodies, so I don't see something like that really.
And I've never talked to anyone, you're the first person that ever heard this thought even come out in words. I've never said it anywhere, and I'm trying to think of anything we can do to protect us up north, anything.
Well, I mean, just keep in mind that I use this analogy about the parallel universe, that everything as it was prior to the election is just the opposite now.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, provided that Dayton wins the recount, I mean, look at how effectively Governor Valenti played his cards as governor when it came to saying, no, that's unacceptable. And as long as Governor Dayton, follows the same playbook that Governor Valenti did and uses that holy pulpit effectively, I think, it's persuading the public. It's getting the public on your side or not as to, are these cuts too draconian and therefore we've got to split the difference? Obviously I don't think Dayton has a strong position right now to argue for his income tax proposal as he proposed it, but can he get half a loaf? I still think he can, especially if you target it to sacred areas like K-12 spending, because I think that the Republic overall is still very, very supportive of K-12 spending. So if it means classrooms are going to be 40, 45 kids. I mean, we just saw in the Duluth paper yesterday where a couple classrooms in Duluth had 35 elementary school, 35 plus kids in them. I mean, that's kind of defeating the purpose of investing in education in the first place. So I think but I mean, unfortunately, the rhetoric is going to be so intense that, I mean, until we get up towards the end of the session, and then take the temperature of the public, like where are you with all this? I don't see a lot of commonality. The commonality that I hear is there seems to be strong support from both the new Republican majority and the Democrat minority and Governor-elect Dayton, and that is jobs. They have to focus on putting a jobs agenda forward. So I can see commonality there, and maybe if they work closely enough on that, that will help bring some of these other budget things more closely together too. And I think that when people appreciate more what some of these cuts mean, that there are ways that, for example, one of the things I'll talk about in a minute here, I'm going to start moving faster, but is that things that we've talked about on the county level about redesign and collaboration and cooperation amongst local units of government and everything. I think that's got a lot of bipartisan support right now. And it's not going to result in the instant savings, though, that this coming budget needs in order to balance things out. But I think that if you put like a 5-year plan together to say, over the next 5 years, we're going to phase out of this, we're going to combine that, we're going to eliminate duplication here and there. I mean, you can have some sizable savings in the state budget, but it's going to take more than one biennium to do it. But if people are serious and they see that this is an opportunity to get a good start, I think that's another area of commonality that well, you'll see bipartisan support in that. So.
One other question, totally off the subject, since I'm trying to think out of the box when you're talking budgets there and stuff. Nowhere have I ever seen when they talk about fresh income coming in, about the state selling off any of its land there and stuff. And I think that we have tremendous, because we spend a lot of money each year buying land, the state does. And I'm really thinking that it'd be almost like putting that money in the bank there and stuff. Now, if we sold off some of that land, and it could be targeted, we could get a buy-in by, so much put out there and stuff. We could be looking at a tremendous amount of one-time money coming in for new revenue that could take and offset some of the K-12, et cetera, and stuff. I mean, because the state has the ability to take and say, you know what, that money's not going to be going back into the DNR, it's going to go back into K-12 or whatever, I mean, there's, statutes can be changed. But it never ever shows up, but yet at the same time, I'll bet you any money in any budget, they'll have money to take and buy more land, guaranteed, absolutely guaranteed. So, just so it's said, so.
Okay,
Blake,
but
I appreciate you saying that.
Looking at our limited time here,
Okay.
you do have to be back here for 1 o'clock. So
all right, I want to move through rather quickly. To simplify, I'm just going to rapid fire go through the comprehensive list of items and then jump to the next recommendations. Civil service, we hear from Martha that that's probably dead for this coming year, so let's not waste any time on that one for the 25th straight year. Protect PILT, I think that one goes without saying. We know the seriousness of that issue, and I'll touch on that a little bit more when we get to the specific recommendations. Armor sales tax exemption, that's about a $400,000 item. I'll also touch on that in a minute. Pursue the bonding bill. The key there is if there is a bonding bill. There appears to be not a lot of interest in the new legislative majority to have a bonding bill this year. However, they do say that towards the end of session, as a bargaining chip, if they need an emergency bonding bill with some items like public safety items and everything in there, they would be open to that. So we may want to keep something like AJC and NERC on there because that's public safety. But those are back burner things until later in the session, it appears. They may not even name a bonding committee, I hear, but we'll know shortly. Examiner titles anomaly, this is something that is a holdover for the last couple of years. We have a county employee, the examiner titles, supervised by a non-county entity, namely the courts. That needs to be resolved, but it's not necessary to happen in this session. Special sales of tax forfeited lands, as you remember last year, the governor vetoed the lands bill that had that provision in it, and there's about $500,000 of revenue that St. Louis County didn't get. So we need to make sure that bill passes this year because Lord knows we're going to need that revenue in the coming year. As far as intermediate auction sales, I believe that's going to be on at 1 o'clock, right?
right.
Okay. Minnesota only mulch sales. We talked about that as far as noxious weeds and everything getting put on our road right away, and we should restrict to Minnesota only mulch. We had just discussed the need to protect disparity reduction aid and the taconite tax. Also, if the MA opt-in doesn't happen on January 15th, we have this model program now in St. Louis County for this GAMC collaboration, and I think that we would need to take the lead statewide and maybe bringing that program to more of a statewide basis because there seems to be a lot of interest around the state about that program. Next item concerns splitting of parcels where some lands are getting sold and the deed transferred and you find out afterwards that it's a non-conforming lot. This is an effort, it's actually modeled after a law that that Olmsted County got passed a few years ago. This came from the recorder's office, where they're asking for the zoning requirements to be adhered to first before the actual transfer of that land occurs. Next item came from our property manager, of course. District courts to pay their prorated share of operating costs in county-owned facilities, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. Data Practices Act. We ran into this problem, I think, this last year, where there were requests for budget preparation material, and the state of Minnesota has a statute that says that that falls under the data privacy. It's not public information, but it doesn't pertain to local units of government. We would like that also to pertain to local units of government. And the final item on there, amend the child care licensing statute to allow a license provider some form of maintenance payments if their license is suspended, pending resolution of an investigation. And this is something that Commissioner Fink and I have talked a few times about, and I think the best solution we can come up with so that these individuals, just because there's been an accident, a kid breaks his arm at a daycare facility, I mean, literally their license is suspended immediately. An investigation, of course, occurs, but it takes time for that investigation to go forward. And meanwhile, the person could easily lose their business because the other kids that were going there can't go there anymore either. So there really should be some kind of a fund set up to at least get those businesses, make sure that they have some cash flow coming in to stay open. And once the investigation is complete, if they're found guilty, obviously they're out of business then. But if it was strictly an innocent thing that happened, chances are they can get back in business then if there's some payments made to keep them whole. Yes?
Is that an immediate thing, like,
Yep.
university daycare, or,
Yep.
no matter who it is?
Yep.
They're shut down, their license is,
Yep.
or a broken bone, or a trip to the
Within
emergency
24
room,
hours
or-
after the accident report is filed, the license is, the recommendation to the state is to suspend the license until pending an investigation.
Okay, moving on to the second page of this. These are issues that are not St. Louis County specific, but more regional or statewide in nature. Protect county program aid and all categorical funding. I think we already discussed that, the importance of that. Oppose cost shifts to counties. This is another item that we've seen in the past when the state has got a budget crunch. They find ways to shift costs onto us. The income maintenance takeover is a classic example where now people under age 65 that are in a nursing home, for X period of time, we have to pay the 10% of the cost of the medical assistance for them. So they find ways to nickel and dime and get the counties to pay for that. CHIPS representation is another example there. So we have to be prepared to oppose any efforts to get the cost shifts from the state onto the counties. Remove the remaining maintenance of effort requirements. Libraries, mental health, and child care, we still have the maintenance of effort provisions on there. Chemical dependency, we did get that removed, so there's now a uniform percentage that every county pays, uniform match. So this might be a good year with all this, especially if they're going to be cutting our local aids and everything, where we can get some help on some of these things like maintenance of effort, get it removed. Explore revenue enhancements. This is an important one because the more county program aid, et cetera, that we lose, the more cuts you're going to have to make out of our existing budget. But if we're given some options such as a county half-cent sales tax to help offset that, or liquor tax to offset our detox, et cetera, these are things which should be seriously looked at. I know there was a lot of discussion during the gubernatorial campaign about that half-cent sales tax that candidate Horner had. Micah has a statement that basically says, instead of using the Horner model, they're saying a county should be able to keep its own, if it raises its sales tax half a cent, it should be able to keep all that revenue within its own county. We would come out a winner in St. Louis County in that instance, rather than the Horner proposal, of course, said 20% of your total has to go into a statewide pot. But Micah is saying that's where the state should step in. The state should take care of that statewide pot and help the poorer counties and equalize those poorer counties with some state funding.
John, would you have any estimates about what in St. Louis County that happened since sales tax was raised?
If I remember correctly, the city of Duluth brings in around $12 million a year right now off their 1 cent. So if we had half a cent, we could be, countywide, we could be in that same neighborhood. Obviously, Duluth has more tourists and stuff in the summer, but I've seen the number, but we do come out
We
of,
could automatically do it for 6 million coming. We need to-
just on the Duluth, from Duluth. So if you want to double that number for, you know,
For the rest of the county.
yeah, 10 million. So it's something to think about because options are going to be a necessity this year.
But there are only 12, I mean, there are only 12 or 13 winners in this. 14 winners, maybe 15 winners, you got Homestead and Mankato and us, and then the core counties, the 13 core counties around the metro area. Everybody else would be losers in terms of, there's no other major metropolitan area except Lake County and for Moorhead. So there's really there's a big dichotomy here about who's the winners and who's the losers and how to get back there.
And just my opinion, that if the money gets sent to the state to be divvied out, we'll all be losers because within 1 or 2 years, they will keep all of the money, guaranteed. They did the same, for those that haven't been in that long, when about 25 years ago, 26 years ago, all of the cities, all of the local units of government signed on to the half a cent because that half a cent was going to guarantee our LGA. And we needed to have resolution from and I was part of the city of Ely at the time, we signed the thing, so we could keep that half a cent there, that'll guarantee LGA. It didn't take them 2 legislatures